Our next panel is a terrific panel. It's called Digital Rock Stars Take the Stage. The moderator of this panel is somebody whose career you should really aim to emulate. This is somebody who has done pretty much everything short of on-camera work in the television business, from affiliate marketing to general management to business, and now is in a really exciting stage of his career at Scripps Networks. He is the general manager of all the Scripps digital networks, which is really cool because this is OTT, and streaming is really where a lot of the industry is heading, as a lot of our panels have demonstrated. Scripps just recently launched a brand new over-the-top brand called Genius Kitchen, which is a streaming service both in app and online for all things cooking and interesting food-related stuff. And they're going to be talking about that. He's just a wonderful executive, but also a really great person too. So I'd like to bring to the stage General Manager of Scripps Digital Networks, Michael Smith.
Now I'm going to introduce the panelists in a moment, but before I would just give a little background about what the role of all of us is within the company. Scripps Networks, as you guys know, is a company that oversees 6 different TV networks that are in the lifestyle space. We have a cooking channel, food network, HGTV, DIY, travel channel, and Great American Country. And for most of the company's history, actually all of the company's history, the way we've reached consumers has been through traditional TV cable boxes that probably your parents used to watch television. Most of you guys, I'm sure, watch television now through the internet, either through your smartphone or on your mobile device or on your computer, and that's what we see as the future of television distribution. So providing content to people, not just through cable boxes, but digitally, has become a really big part of our company and a really important thing that we're really focused on. And so these 4 people here really are a big part of how we are transitioning and taking advantage of the opportunity to reach younger people through digital media. So I'm going to start with each of them, have them just kind of tell you what their name and what their title and role is in our company, and then we'll go into the questions. So let me start with Amanda, the first one.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. I'm Amanda Gryphon. I'm Senior Managing Editor for Genius Kitchen, which is Scripps' newest food brand. And there I'm responsible for a lot of recipe testing and development, coming up with a lot of video concepts, which is our new priority at Genius Kitchen, overseeing food news and all of our editorial strategy and just all of our seasonal priorities that we program throughout the year.
I'm Sarah Adler, and I'm one of the co-founders of Spoon University. I've focused on all of the engineering, product, and community parts of the company. So we have chapters on college campuses all over the world, and all those chapters produce all of the content that is on Spoon University on the site and on social media all over the internet. And we give them all the tools to kind of build communities on their college campuses and produce all that content.
I'm Mackenzie. I'm the other co-founder of Spoon. How many people here know about Spoon from Pace? Oh, look at that. That's fun. We have a great Pace chapter you guys should check out if you're not on it already. Yay. So I oversee kind of 2 parts of the business. One is on the sales side of things, so how Spoon makes money to survive. And then the other side is editorial, video, audience development, making sure that all of our community members are supported in creating amazing content that's going out to our audience of awesome young people.
Hey guys, I'm Toren. I'm the Director of Social Media for Food Network. Basically, that just means I oversee all the programming on our social platforms and pretty much everything you see from any Food Network account except for Snapchat, which has its own huge team. Basically, we program the entire calendar. We do Facebook Lives with talent. So many different things that it's not even coming to my mind right now, but we'll discover it as we go.
Okay, well, the first question, especially since most of you, how many of you are actually college undergraduates right now? Okay, most of you. So the first question to everybody is, what did you learn in college that has helped so far in your career? And then what things have you learned that have not been helpful?
Should I say? For me, well, I started I went to school for broadcasting, actually, and it ended up that I got to work at Food Network first, which was very valuable because I learned a lot of on-set production background stuff, from editing to directing to producing and like audio. So that was all really great. I went to Temple University in Philly, and they had a great broadcasting program, which really set me up fantastically for working on set of a lot of like big shows like Barefoot Contessa and Iron Chef America and Rachel Ray's show. So that was all super valuable for me. And then, I don't know, things that were less valuable in college, probably classes like logic, which I don't think I use as much just like,
in media
these days. But broadcasting was great.
For me, I majored in journalism and religious studies in college, which I loved, and I took really amazing and interesting classes in religious studies, and I think that to a certain extent in college, you're learning how to think more than anything else, and classes that teach you how to like think about the world are surprisingly helpful when you're just like trying to solve problems in the world like after college. And in terms of vocational stuff, what I think is so interesting is that so much of what I learned in college that is applicable to Spoon now was stuff that Kenzie and I learned while we were actually starting Spoon outside of classes in college. And that through like starting Spoon and having this like extracurricular activity that we felt ownership over, that we were like kind of project managing end to end, like that is still what we're doing. So to a certain extent, that was very applicable.
Yeah, I would agree. That was the best thing I learned, was how to work with other people, work with a team, lead people, come up with ideas, and that was all extracurricular via Spoon as a publication. So I think that by far, I was a communication studies major, we both went to Northwestern, but the communication studies classes I took weren't super applicable. There was one media law and ethics class that actually does come up now, especially with Scripps Legal, yay, that I do pull a lot from. And I would say that there were a lot of classes I took that weren't helpful in work life, but are actually like really helpful for understanding the world, that I actually wish I took more of. Like, I took a lot of media-related classes that weren't necessarily super helpful for working in media. I think having media experience is the most helpful for working in media. But I wish I took more history classes. I wish I took more logic classes. Like all these things that I don't necessarily need, that I think would make me just have a more just like, rich, background of things to pull from, I think would be fun kind of in retrospect, and then being able to do extracurriculars to get the skills that you need to go into media, I think worked out well for us.
I'm an engineer now, so like the religious studies and journalism stuff was not necessarily applicable.
But you did say that you took the LSAT, which helped you with engineering, right?
Logic.
Yeah.
Some works for some people.
Yeah, I totally agree with them. When I was in college, I used to dread group projects, but what you learn when you enter the real world is that every project in work is a group project. You very rarely get to own something completely unless you go and start your own company like them. You're constantly working with different people on things. There's always a slacker. These things don't go away when you enter the workforce. The most valuable thing I learned was how to handle that when I was in college, which sometimes is, taking the brunt of the work, or kind of engaging with the people in your team to figure out what's the problem. But I totally agree, like the actual class, the stuff that we learned, like the quadratic equation is not used in my daily work life. However, just the interpersonal skills really helped. And also, I took a business writing class that taught me how to use Excel, Google Docs, how to write a resume. If there's a class that offers these kind of programs, take them. Like, the people who know how to use Google Docs in our company are like the geniuses and experts, and they're highly dependent on for every presentation. I'm in Google Docs like 50% of my day. If you can do a simple function, equal sign, whatever, you're already ahead of most people in the workforce. So that is my advice.
Now, what was the hardest thing to get used to, or the hardest part of transitioning from being on a college campus to being a grown-up?
So for us, we graduated college and then moved to New York to try to start Spoon as a real company. And I think that the hardest thing, looking back on it for me, was was that there was no plan ever. You know, in college it's like, okay, you have a semester, you have finals, you have a semester, you have finals, then you have summer, then you have a new school year, and you can see what the next couple of years of your life looks like, even the next couple of months. And for us, there was no end date, and there was no plan, and we had to create that ourselves. And so I think that that was probably the biggest adjustment for us that took a while to get used to, was this endlessness of work, which was exciting because we got to set it ourselves, but also pretty scary and definitely an adjustment.
And you show up on the first day of class and you walk into the room and the professor says, here's what you're going to learn over the course of the next couple months. Here's a syllabus with all the books you're going to read. Here's how I'm going to grade whether or not you learned these things. And then at the end, they give you a grade. And that is so unlike life. And it's so funny, especially for us, when we didn't even have a boss who could tell us what our goals should be or how we were going to be measured or what it would take to get promoted. For us to feel like we went through a first initial phase where we were like, okay, we have full and complete freedom and independence. We're gonna go after every single idea we have and think of. And then we realized that we had to kind of sit down and define a syllabus for ourselves. And that transition took way longer than it should have in hindsight.
For me, I guess the hardest part for me was I was kind of excited to get out of school and start working. I don't know if everybody feels that way, but I was kind of excited about it. But the hardest part, I think, was just knowing that I wanted to live in New York but not having a job yet. And so what do? You have to make rent. And so what I just did when I first moved here was I did a temp job for a couple months until and so I was able to be here to physically do interviews. And that was just sort of a means to an end. And you don't necessarily want to do that on your way to what you're actually interested in, but sometimes it's necessary. So it actually worked out, 1 or 2 months of temping, and then actually, got a job at Food Network and ended up doing what I wanted to do. But it's, was just sort of don't be frustrated by those little bumps in the road on the way to your larger goal.
For me, I graduated in 2009, which I don't know if all of you are familiar. We were doing really bad as a country, and there were no jobs, and everyone was having a really hard time finding them. So what I did was I decided to go to Spain for a year and teach English at a high school. I did that for a year. It was the most amazing experience of my life. I came back for the summer thinking I was going to go back for a second year. Was I'll just go on the Food Network website. It's always been my dream to work for the company. I saw a listing for an ad sales assistant. I applied for it, and the best and worst day of my life was when I got that job because I really wanted to go back to Spain. So it was a big adjustment living in Spain and working not many hours a week and not being accountable or responsible for people to having a full-time job where I was basically working my first job 60 hours a week. Being a sales assistant is a thankless job. I'm in a completely different department now, which I'm sure we'll get to later, but it was a huge adjustment having to wear a tie every day. Now I don't, thankfully. I've earned my way out of the tie, but it was a huge adjustment.
Well, that's a good transition because you started in sales and you ended up in digital. What led you to get all you guys to see digital as the place that you wanted to go to? Was it just happenstance, or did you have a vision of it? Or, why are you working in digital?
It's actually funny. For us, we started Spoon at Northwestern as a print magazine because we had both interned at print magazines. We thought they were sexy and fun, and we got to hold a thing in your hand. And Northwestern actually still prints a magazine, and it is still sexy and fun and beautiful. I think we kind of fell into digital because we had so many people on the team at Northwestern who wanted to write content, and there were only 44 pages in the magazine. We couldn't fill enough pages with everyone's content. And so digital for us really became a place where we could allow people to do what they wanted to do. It was a forever living, breathing document, website, destination for more people to contribute to the platform. And so it kind of was a side project to the magazine at first, but then we quickly realized that that was the way that we could be able to scale this thing. And so when we started new chapters at the first couple schools senior year, that was what we gave to them. We gave them our little WordPress site, we trained them in how to use it and how to publish content, and suddenly you can have so many more writers and so many more voices and so many more articles published than you could in a magazine. So for us it was, we kind of fell into it, but it was also the right time. That's when everything was moving online, and I think I had a gut feeling, having interned at all these magazines throughout college, that there was something changing, and I don't even think I could have put my finger on it then. except for just even feeling firsthand that, oh wow, the internet opens so many doors to allow more things to happen more quickly too.
I mean, I also think there's something to be said for looking around at the world and seeing which parts of the world look like the Wild Wild West. And that's probably like, there are going to be a lot more opportunities to figure stuff out and to find things and like have freedom in those areas than there will be in areas that are like very like defined already. And you know, because the internet and digital and social video all kind of felt like it was the Wild Wild West, we were able to experiment in ways we wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think I didn't even necessarily aim to end up in digital either, but it sort of just happened that way. Like from broadcasting to eventually working as like an editor on a digital like magazine tablet app, which was kind of sort of like working on a print magazine, and then eventually segueing into writing for like Food Network and Cooking Channel's website. Just because I was sort of looking for new challenges and realized that I really wanted to get back to writing, which was one of the things I loved doing in college. And so obviously, also as part of that, like digital video has become so important in the past few years, and that just offers a lot of opportunities too for us to play around with like what makes a successful recipe video. Like now in the age of Tasty and just like all the competition around that space, it really allows you a lot of freedom, at least for us on Genius Kitchen. Like we're always sort of testing the limits of, you know, is this going to be too weird for people, or is this something people will latch on to? And I find that there's sort of like a sweet spot for that kind of content now that, but it's still very exciting. It's very fast paced in the digital space, and there's always a new goal that we're going after, whether it's video streams or page views or whatever it is. So I just like that there's always something new happening and new ways to experiment too.
Yeah, you know, you talked about the videos that people are watching in BuzzFeed and everything. It used to be people would get cookbooks and read food magazines, but and you guys started a magazine initially. Do you think this, or how has the way people interact with food as a media product changed, and do you think that's a permanent change, or is it going to go back to magazines, or is this video thing a fad, or?
I think it's become really more of a lifestyle for a lot of people. You know, I think it speaks to the interest that people have in sort of bettering themselves and conjuring like a specific image of themselves like on social media. You know, a lot of what people find to be like really satisfying aspirational content is food videos that we create, you know, and so like I really want to make these pizza skulls that we have right now on that are like blowing up on Facebook right now, and it's a simple concept. It's like you just buy this skull-shaped Halloween pan from Target, and then you can make these awesome little stuffed pizza skulls, and people like really associate that that's like easy but also impressive, and they want to impress their friends and share them on social media. So I think it's just become more of our everyday lifestyle to like share all of those things and want our friends to see it and be impressed and like feel good about ourselves, and that's just like something everybody can sort of relate to at this point, you know.
I think also just the way people get their information now is so different than it used to be. News is so accessible on people's phones. So much content is at the palm of your hands that it almost makes it a little bit more disposable. Things are moving so quickly in social that I don't think it's going to be changing anytime soon. I think like print, while it's, as she said, it can be beautiful, it can be sexy, it's immediately dated the second it comes out, and the beauty about having all these digital brands is that we just post something else if there's a new trend the next day. We're always chasing the trends, we're always pivoting and following the numbers, and it's just like such a longer lead time for something that you have to print.
I do think too, because food has become such a lifestyle, every publication has latched onto that. Now there's so much food content. It's almost, I think, commoditized at this point. It's like how much more food videos can exist in the world, and so we think a lot about how do you bring that experience in new ways. And one thing that we've done a lot of lately, and our big one was this past weekend, is events, and trying to use technology to actually get people together in real life to experience food in real life. And you don't have to be like an insane food person to want to go to a place to taste great food, or to hear speakers who have started companies in the food space. Or this past week at our Brain Food event, we had a career corner where we had job and internship opportunities for food companies. So it's all aspects of food I think people are now connecting with. And so for us, it's trying to figure out how do we help get people together around food in real life as another form of content that feels different than like a 30-second food video.
It's interesting that two of you guys represent working for big companies initially to start your careers, and then other two of you represent starting your own company, being more entrepreneurs. To the entrepreneurs, what was the thinking that led you? Were your parents entrepreneurs? Were you always sort of risk takers? Did you like to, wgo to Las Vegas a lot? Where did that bug and courage come from to actually do your own thing?
I think what connects the two of us is that we're both big problem solvers. Like, we're really motivated by trying to find solutions to problems. And so when we were in college, we felt like there was this opportunity / problem, although it wasn't like a deep issue. It was more of like, there are a lot of people now talking about food. We moved off campus, try to cook yourself for the first time. There's like zero information. You don't know what you're doing. And we felt like there were so many people in that situation who wanted resources and wanted to talk to each other, but there was no community and no platform to do that. And so we saw this as an opportunity to create a space where basically we could leverage the smarter people on campus who figured their stuff out in food to help us figure out how to cook or where to eat out in Evanston or whatever it was. And so I think it was just really connecting with that problem, and then using our experiences and kind of trusting ourselves, and also just wanting a new adventure that allowed us to be able to start Spoon on campus. But I do think that when we started Spoon as a publication on campus, we never envisioned that it would become a business long term. It was just this safe space to start something fun, to get involved with something. And I think that with those experiences, you learn a lot about yourself and you gain a lot of skills. And then I think it helps you build the confidence to be able to be like, okay, when we graduate, we've set these milestones for ourselves. Let's see if we can set more milestones and achieve them. And once we hit that next goal, it was, okay, maybe there's something here. And I think over time we were willing to keep going and continue to find new problems to solve and solve them.
I think for us it was so much more organic than it is when you're like at a company, you have an idea for this other startup you want to have, so you quit your job and try to start this company out of nothing, which is an amazing thing to do and sounds far scarier than what we did, which was have like a slow, long, year at Northwestern where we could build up this thing, get enough positive feedback that we felt validated enough to spend the summer on it, get enough positive feedback and make enough progress that we felt validated enough that we could move to New York and try to keep working on it, and then had a slow slog of a year until we got into an accelerator program here in the city, and it was like enough validation in each step that we kept working on it, and it kept growing. So it's definitely not like it was not a Vegas style bet.
And then for you guys, I always think about YouTube videos and the descriptions under the video. So underneath the video, for those of you who don't know, the Scripps company acquired Spoon, and so you guys are now part of a bigger company. And what was the thinking for that, for you guys to partner with a larger company?
We've always looked up to Food Network. Like, from the beginning, we were always like, we're going to be the younger version of Food Network. Like, we would watch it all the time, but felt like, there's something that's missing that we could probably create. And so it was always kind of in the back of our mind of how can we partner with Food Network. It started as a Snapchat Discover partnership, actually. So I don't know if you guys ever watched Spoon Saturdays on Food Network Snapchat Discover. It's a very fun day that we program. We've been doing that for a while, started working with the team, and then we're kind of at this point in the company where we were thinking about what does the future look like for us, and we had a lot of conversations with people at Scripps, and they were, it kind of seemed really synergistic. And what if we became part of this company? We actually became the actual younger version of Food Network that could then feed into Genius Kitchen and then could then feed into Food Network and allow us as a baby company to have resources that we wouldn't have access to otherwise. So from a strategic perspective, it made a lot of sense for us. From a people perspective, we loved everybody that we met at Scripps and really thought that we could see that all the people there got the vision for Spoon and wanted to make it happen with us, and so that was really exciting for us. And it's been almost 6 months now, and it's been great.
Good. So Toren, you work on social media communications, and which is to me almost the fastest growing way of people getting food information. And now, so tell us about the different platforms that you, whether it's Facebook Live or some of the, I guess there's a whole lot of new emerging ones as well that you find are really working.
Sure. The biggest platforms for us, I would say, are Facebook and Instagram. It's where we have our largest audience and where we see the highest engagement on all the stuff we produce. But we also have a Twitter account, a Pinterest account, a Tumblr, literally everything you could think of, we have a social platform for. Facebook is our biggest baby just because we have such a good relationship with the company of Facebook in general. We have a certain amount of Facebook Live minutes we have to do every month, so every time you see that notification from Food Network, if you're following us, which you should do, it's usually me at some restaurant in the city, either filming a chef making some really popular dish, or maybe it's someone in Food Network Kitchen making something, one of their own recipes. Like on this past Monday, we had the Pioneer Woman come in and do a Facebook Live in the kitchen. So it's a really, really, really fun gig, and social in general is just, it's never the same from day to day. I'm constantly asked, like, what's a typical day? And like, I just don't even know where to start. It's like, what are the 5 fires that are currently burning in my email? Like 2 minutes before this, I was on the phone with PR about something. It's exciting. It's high pressure. It never stops. That's a lesson you'll learn. As much as you want to, kind of tune off on the weekend and focus on your life, the job never ends.
The internet never sleeps.
The internet never sleeps, and something can go viral while you are sleeping, literally. It's a big world out there, and New York is not the center of it as much as we'd like to think it is. And it's just been a crazy, crazy job.
All right, well, I'm going to go to questions from the group, I think, since we've got about 10 minutes left, and then see anybody have questions?
Hi there, my name is Kaylee. I was just wondering, we were talking about social media, how you guys best use the data analytics you get from social media to maybe improve posting, make it better for the next post, how you use that to kind of target the audience you're looking at.
Sure. I mean, that was the biggest surprise for me when I started social media, and every time I'm hiring someone, it seems to be the biggest surprise to them. It's that we're not just willy-nilly posting things that we think will do well. We have so many analytical tools that can help guide how we program, and we pretty much don't post anything without doing a deep review on how it did and why. There are a lot of social vendors that provide various levels of analytics, but every single tool itself also has its own analytics. Once you have a business page on Facebook, you'll never look at it the same again because every post just has a crazy amount of analytics, how many people liked it, how many people shared it. If it's a video, at what point in the video did someone stop watching? And then it's like, why did they stop watching at that point? You can really obsess over it or ignore it as much as you want. And I know everyone has a different strategy on how they kind of use those numbers, but it's a huge driving force in how we come up with new content. We're constantly looking at trends. There's different vendors who will kind of send us that information, be like, spaghetti squash is the new thing, and all of a sudden we're developing 10 recipes for spaghetti squash. But don't believe that. That was last year.
A lot of social media success, I think, in addition to creating great content, which is the first piece, is around packaging. So in Facebook, for example, you get a caption, you get a headline, you get a deck sometimes if it's an article, or if it's a video, you get the first 3 seconds to capture people's attention. And so not for every piece of content because it would be too insane, but for some things we'll do A/B testing, which is where you have one version with one headline and one image. You also have an image to play with. You have another caption or image. You can play around with the variables, and then you put them out to a test group of people and see which one gets the most clicks, or which one gets the most shares, or which one gets the most comments, depending on what your goal is. And then once you have that initial data for which is the right strategy, then you post it to your entire audience, and that's when you see a lot more engagement. So you could, to your point, spend all day A/B testing everything and driving yourself crazy, or you can kind of focus on which are the pieces of content that are really important that you want to make sure really get to the right audience. And there's tons of tools and tons of strategies to be able to do that, but it's kind of the first thing that people see. It's the packaging of it, or those first 3 seconds of a video that you can tweak and cut different frames to be able to catch people's attention more. And it gets really down to a science, which has a big impact on numbers at the end of the day.
The annoying part also is that sometimes there's a fluke. Sometimes something does well and you have no idea why, or something does poorly and you don't know why. I always love the BuzzFeed dress example. Do you remember you got the dress that no one could tell what color it was? They posted that once, it got no engagement, and someone had a whim in the company to delete that post and repost it again, and the second time they posted it, it went viral. It was like the difference of hours. I can't explain why the second post did better, but the Facebook algorithm just ranked that post highly and it just took off. So it's a funny lesson. Like, you can kind of pour over the analytics and torture yourself with it, or you cannot, and both are not wrong.
Is that another hand? Okay.
Hi, my name is Lulu, and I actually also work at a food PR company, and I work in editorial calendars for different clients and restaurants. And I was just wondering what advice you guys may have about like finding a brand or a voice or a specific identity that really stands out amongst all of these, different chefs, restaurants, brands that all are trying to like form a voice, especially towards millennials.
It's a good question because there is so much out there, and it's something that we constantly ask ourselves too, is how do you stand out amongst all food media? And what we're actually about to do with our team is just have all of the main stakeholders get into a room and decide, what do we want to stand for? Like, where do we think there's opportunity in the world? Who hasn't done X? And can we do X? And it's just really about trying to really establish, I think, those guidelines for yourself of here's who we stand for, here's who we're not, here's what our audience looks like, here's who our audience is not, and then creating guidelines so that everyone in the company can use those, and you have kind of that North Star that can translate across email, it can translate across social, it can translate across internal marketing messages to really create this like consistent brand voice. And so it really depends company to company, but I think just making sure that everyone's in a room deciding this together and aligned and knows what that is and then how to execute it is how you keep it consistent and ultimately keep it strong and hopefully unique.
Any other ones?
You want to go?
Well, I think that for us, what we've always tried to do is, like, Spoon was kind of started based on this idea that it's really hard for, like, media companies or conference rooms of humans under any circumstance to sit around and, like, decide what the people of the world want. And that it's especially hard when it's a conference room full of people that are not young college students trying to decide what young college students would want. And so we created Spoon to be like a bottoms-up approach to not make it so that Spoon was just deciding what the trends were, but so that when the trends kind of pop up in life as they do organically, that they would find like a place to be expressed and people could give their opinion on them and discuss them and talk about them. But that it wasn't our job to like make fetch happen, but it was our job to like, realize what was going on.
Yeah, and for that too, I find that we're always looking at Instagram and social media and just seeing what other people are responding to, but I think more so than creating like new trends, we also find that there's a real sweet spot in our digital video that really captures, so it sort of starts with like a familiar recipe and maybe putting a twist on it or presenting it in a new way that people hadn't thought of before. So as long as there's something that people can latch on to that they're really comfortable with, either flavor-wise or whatever it is, and you just provide it with a slightly different twist that people, find really exciting and haven't seen before, it feels fresh to them again. And so in that way, it's not so much as like having to predict new trends, it's just like repackaging and reimagining things that people already love in a new way, which I find is some of our most successful videos actually end up being, things that are just reimagined in a new way.
Yeah, okay. Well, one final question I want to, we're getting close to the end, is can you tell me a mistake that you've made in your career so far? What's the biggest mistake that you've made, and what do you think you learned from it?
I think
this one wasn't on the list of pre-questions.
For us, I'll speak on behalf of us, but you can also give your own separate answer. But one thing that we talk about a lot is that I think the biggest mistake the first year that we made was trying to do everything at once. Like, we could see 5 years in the future, and of all these things that we could do with Spoon, and we wanted to do all of them now because we had the idea now, and we thought, why not just do them? And what happens is that when you don't focus, you actually can't do anything well. And so there we were, like, kind of trudging along this first year after college, growing a little, yes, but again, not even having goals to set for ourselves and not understanding why we couldn't make all these dreams come true immediately. And it wasn't until we got into this accelerator program that they really helped us focus and pick one goal and work backwards. It's like, okay, you want to go raise a seed round of financing with the end of this accelerator program. What are you going to need to get there? Then make that your goal and then work backwards and have everybody on the team do all of their activities to reach that goal. And it was kind of an extreme 12-week experience of doing that, but really helped us, I think, understand the idea of focus. And when everyone's laser focused on a goal, you actually get there so much faster and you're able to say no to things more easily. And so I think that that first year we wasted a lot of time with doing all of the things and maybe could have moved faster or grown faster if we had focused a bit more and set goals for ourselves.
I think, we talked about that all the time. I think that another thing that we could have done a lot better, that we didn't realize quite how important it was, is just how important all the people are. So when we're hiring people for our teams, when we're deciding when to fire people on teams, I think that, and everyone always says this, but hire slowly and fire fast, and it's a really impossible thing to do in practice, it feels like, but we could be so much better.
Specific examples are easier for me, but I don't think they're really life worthy to talk about. Like one popped up where I was working on Barefoot Contessa's show, and I was we were working on some sort of cheese mold or something, and I accidentally stuck my finger in it and ruined it, and we had to go make another one. I was not really, it didn't affect my career thus far, but it was a moment that I was oh, I should have been more careful with that cheese.
No more cheese for
you. I don't
you.
have good examples.
If that's the biggest mistake you've made, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, that's all I've ever done wrong. That's it.
No, sometimes it's not. It's not an earth-shattering, and sometimes you don't realize the moment, the importance of the moment, until a long time after. So.
I guess my biggest mistake is thinking that things would come quickly if I worked hard enough and tried my best. Things are often a lot more complex than that. I told you guys I started in sales, but I always wanted to work on the creative side. I really only took that job because I wanted my foot in the door. And that's a good lesson for all of you. If you have a passion that you really believe in and something you really want to do, and you just know even what industry you want to work in, try to find an entry-level position in that field. You never know where it's going to lead. I tried to use every connection I made along the way. But I applied for a lot of jobs that I did not get, and things that I knew I deserved, things that I really believed I had the credentials for, things that didn't even make sense. But the social media job that I have now is I think the 5th job that I applied for after being in sales, and it's 100% the place for me. Some of the jobs that I didn't get, that I was so upset about, I have nightmares about actually getting those jobs because they're so terrible and not right for me. And the other thing I would say is social media in general, it's such a beautiful field where we know more than our parents. There are so many fields where, print, where there are experts that have been doing it for so long and they know better than you. And the biggest thing is just believe in yourself, believe in your knowledge. You grew up on these platforms. Facebook is inherent to you. Your phones are inherent to you. Our parents are all still learning that stuff. And that's the biggest lesson I really learned, is trust myself. My opinion is just as valuable as these stuffy executives.
Well, ending on that note, this stuffy executive would like to thank you all for coming, and thank Amanda and Sarah and Mackenzie and Toren.